What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome. Y'all have waited 28 years for this review, but we are here talking about my number one most anticipated movie of the year, because when that first teaser came out, I didn't watch any other trailer. I said, God damn, that was the best trailer of the decade, and it instantly became my number one most anticipated movie of the year. Basically, how we're going to do this is it's going to be giving us our basic thoughts, and then there are going to be some slight spoilers that I do want to talk about since the film's been out long enough. So we will tell you guys when those spoilers happen, and then we will actually get into that stuff. For right now, we're just getting kind of non-spoiler thoughts, what we thought about the film overall, what we thought about maybe the filming, all that kind of stuff. And I'll say this, I thought this was really profound in what it was trying to say about fatherhood, was trying to say about growing up to become kind of a man in a society that is trying to hold you back. It was very interesting, the themes that it was conveying here, themes about loss, themes about moving on, all this type of stuff. So it was really, really powerful to me. I haven't seen Danny Boyle get this good in a long time. I was not a huge fan of some of his other most recent stuff, but this felt like a return to form for Danny Boyle. You know, he's very experimental with his films, and I've not seen him get this batshit insane in a while. This movie goes for the jugular, just swings for the fences, absolutely just leaves you in awe. I was shocked at what I was witnessing with this film.
Such a shift from where he's been at, you know. You talk about how he's an experimental filmmaker, but this, I feel, is experimental in a way he has not been in a very, very, very long time. Yeah, I definitely think this is, for him, just such a return to form, and made me so invigorated, not just for this franchise, but for what Danny Boyle is going to do next. He has the third movie in this thing coming out, but what's he going to do after that? Because where has this guy been for the last 20 years? This is like a totally different filmmaker.
But what about yesterday? Straight up fact.
I like Yesterday enough, but this is not even the same guy.
This kind of has that, hey, what if I took that batshit insanity from like Sunshine or something and threw this as like basically the whole movie? And so like he's really doing something that I think is truly special and unique here. Like, obviously it's not an original film, it's based off an IP, but it feels like an original film. I get it that it's kind of cheating in the sense of what he did with the iPhones, but the fact that this was all shot on iPhones just completely blew my mind. They built an entire iPhone rig. That was completely insane to me. The level of artistry behind it, the passion behind it, and then also the performances I want to point out on my side between Alfie Williams. He was a huge standout for me. This child performance just completely blew my socks off. I've never seen this kid before, and he's gonna go places.
Do things.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, really great in the film. Jodie Comer, she stole every scene she was in. She was phenomenal. Ray Fiennes, who you didn't even know was in the film, he was so good in this movie. And this is a type of movie that I feel that it's one of those films that critics really love, audiences are mixed on, but over the years, because of the insanity of it, it'll become this cult classic that people go back to. And so I personally really loved it, and I just keep on thinking about it. And the more I keep on thinking about it, the more I love it. What did you think on this one, Tristan?
Yeah, I'll echo some of what you said for sure about how exciting this is stylistically. Danny Boyle adds in some really unique flares, like these static shots in the action that are sort of like these freeze frames of like a head blowing up and stuff like that are really crazy and feel like something you don't see in the movies today. And the iPhone technology is distracting at first a little bit, but once you get into the look and the feel of the movie, it's really engaging. And I think when he uses that to the fullest effect, like there's a couple of shots of like Aaron Taylor Johnson running and he's like right on his face, and the fact that it's so tight and that it has this like lo-fi kind of video quality to it makes it even more scary, I think, and calls back to that first movie that had that like shot on VHS kind of feel to it. And this is the shot on VHS of 2025. You know, this is what today's shot on VHS is like. And it's really energizing because this is something that is made with technology that we have access to. And if we don't have access to it now, we'll have access to it in like the next decade or whatever. So if you're a budding filmmaker, it's exciting to watch this and think, wow, this is something that we can be working with technology wise. But beyond the tech side, it's a really engaging movie thematically. Like you mentioned, there's a lot going on here for me, I think there might have just been a little too much going on. It definitely is the first of a 3-part thing. I don't feel like it really gets to the finality of what it's trying to say here by the end. And I got through the arc of the main character fine, but I felt like there was a lot thematically left on the table that I was really wondering if he would go more into, and he didn't go into it here. But it's because it's the first part of a 3-part thing, and when you get to the end of it, you get a cliffhanger essentially. And I enjoyed the swings of this. You mentioned that it's going to be divisive, and I think some of the divisive parts are going to come from the tonal shifts that happen here. It'll go from like, it's almost like a 3 totally different movies. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson is a heavy part of the first half of this movie, and then kind of just like falls to the background a little bit for a lot of it. And that was something that I had a big problem with, not necessarily because you can't shift perspectives, but because I was spending a lot of time with this son and his father and building up this relationship between these two characters. And then to just kind of like go a different direction in terms of the plot and who it focuses on, I was not a huge fan of that choice. And it does another shift towards the end that is just so bizarre. Like in the last 5-10 minutes, I'm like, is this even the same movie that I started watching? Because I don't know what's happening here in the last 5 minutes. But for me, it's a crazy movie that bites off a huge chunk of what it wants to say, doesn't quite land, but I'm willing to give it the benefit of a doubt with the fact that it's the first part of the 3 parts within that section. I think for me, what's most exciting about it is that stylistic stuff from Danny Boyle, who's really pushing himself forward here. I don't want to overlook Alex Garland, though, who's also coming back to this franchise, who has had a huge career and has had such a change in how he writes stylistically. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that if Alex Garland was writing this 20 years ago, would not have been that way. And the way he's grown as a writer has really influenced this movie. There's some of the ways he does like a dancing sequence in Ex Machina and like these really bizarre moments in the movies where you're like, what is this? And there's moments like that in here for sure that I think Alex Garland brought to this film. I really would have a good time watching like the two of them break it down of like whose idea was whose type of thing. But that might be something I keep to the chest.
But I also think Alex Garland still has some of that old writing style in him in this film, because there's stuff I thought, okay, this has enough deeper elements in there to really remind me, yes, this is Alex Garland writing this. With that said, guys, there's a lot to talk about, including the ending that was mentioned here earlier. So the first thing, I guess, to discuss here in the spoiler section, we will go kind of backwards and then, talk about what we want. We have to talk about the most controversial aspect of this movie first. What the fuck was that ending? I know a lot of people are watching this movie and they're saying that this makes no sense. Like, yeah, he is the kid from the beginning of the film. That's what it says and that's what it shows. But then, other than that, what the hell was I watching? Well, here's the thing.
He said it! He said it!
You have to know British history. I didn't know what the fuck I was watching until I looked it up later. And then I even sent the article to Tristan. None of us really knew what we were watching, what it was even supposed to be conveying. But apparently there is this guy named Jimmy Savile who was this popular TV icon, just for later on to find out that he is the number one, blacklisted sexual predator in all of Britain. And this came out in 2011 after he died. So this was something that happened much later in life that people found out about after his death. He's just in hiding for years. And so while the scene's goofy, it makes the overall context of it more dark, because now this trilogy is about all the challenges kids have to face. They have to face the challenges of their parents, which we learned in this film. And now the sequel is setting up that he's going to have to face the challenges of having this mentor who he's going to be led by, who you think you can trust, just to be able to stab you in the back and turns out to be a child predator. And basically Jack O'Connell in interviews have said that he believes is the most evil character he has ever played. And that feels very, very accurate whenever you look up the history. So knowing all that definitely helps when you go see the ending again. Like when I rewatch this film now, knowing that context, I think it's going to improve the ending better for me. But what did you think of the ending?
Yeah, the ending for me was just such a bizarre tonal shift, because we're leaving off of the death of his mother. He's very heartbroken by that. He's been forced to come into his adulthood earlier than he wanted to, and now he's alone. And it's like the emotional height of the movie in terms of its sorrow, and it feels like things are essentially wrapping up. And then you get that just very bizarre last 5 minutes where like this kung fu K-pop group comes out and starts doing like Power Ranger moves and saying catchphrases and kicking zombies in the face. Like, you're underplaying, I think, how incredibly insane this scene is, and how just absurd the shift in style and tone is. It's like all of a sudden, this is an Alice Garland movie in the last 10 minutes. Just a very bizarre thing to adjust your brain to. I liked it ultimately. I think it's a very fun way to end your movie, especially when you're shifting from such a low moment to a high moment. I was laughing out loud in the theater, and I was like, should I be laughing at the end of this movie? Like, I don't know if that's how I should be leaving this movie feeling, but that's how I left. I felt like excited. I was like, I can't wait to see all these like crazy, bizarre characters show up next year and kick zombies in the face. Like, what is this sequel even possibly going to be? Like, I'm so excited, because what am I possibly walking into in this sequel? Like, if you gave me 100,000 guesses what that scene was going to be, I would never have been like, oh, and then this British Power Ranger group shows up and does kung fu fighting. I would have never have thought that, but that's what happened. And I'm really excited to see how that goes from here. I don't know if I love it as like an ending to this story, but I think it's exciting as like a cliffhanger for what's going to be next.
Yeah, and I liked what you told me when you messaged me saying how when the outbreak started back in 2002, that Jimmy Savile would not have been outed as a pedophile yet. So
yeah, and they open up the movie with them watching Teletubbies. It wouldn't be unreasonable for that to have been on right before that. You know, like they probably watched his show and then they watched Teletubbies. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that literally happened in the plot of the. They just like right before this movie started, they were watching that show. You know.
Yeah, so it's something interesting that, you know, these movies are very British.
Ghetto parties, bottles of water.
So I feel like that is a big part of it, but I do also agree it's a drastic tonal shift, especially when you just had a scene that was very emotionally devastating in something like Jodie Comer's death scene, which was really emotional but really powerful for me. And I want to talk about my favorite sequence of the movie real quick, which my favorite sequence of the film is the birthing scene. And the reason why it's my favorite scene, why it stuck out so much to me, is it showed that there's still so much humanity left in these infected. That even though that one soldier says it's a zombie baby or whatever, it's the one time that someone says a zombie in this film. They try to mostly use the word infected because they don't want you to think, oh, these are just monsters who are undead. Like, these are still human beings who are just infected with this virus, and this virus has evolved. So I thought that was a really beautiful way to still craft that these are still human beings. They just so happen to have this disease. And yeah, I got teary-eyed. I got emotional in that sequence because I just thought it was beautiful seeing this human help this infected. And then whenever the birth happens, you see her holding the baby, and like this new life is there, and it's not infected. And it's just, I just thought all that was really beautiful. What did you think of that sequence?
Yeah, this was easily the most interesting part, I think, of the entire film. Thematically, plot-wise, lore-wise, like, I'm really excited to see what comes of that baby. I'm happy it survived just because I want to see what it grows up into. They were so insistent of like, oh, it's not infected, but like, do you have a lab you tested it in? You don't know anything about this baby. Like, it could be carrying something. It could be a Last of Us style situation. Like, it has the cure or something like that, you know, and maybe born of evil comes the birth of new life type of situation. I can see that being a theme, especially in this movie, because a lot of that is like something born of evil. What does that become? You know, in the opening sequence, it shows the origin of this guy, Jimmy, being born of this really cruel father who's just obsessed with the downfall of society. I really want to revisit that character because that opening sequence feels so separate in a lot of ways from the rest of the movie, but also when you think about the movie as a statement about fatherhood, it's very important to the rest of the film in terms of setting up the worst version of a father, almost someone who's willing to give up everything for their son, but in the worst possible way. And when you get to that birthing sequence, it's very interesting when you get the reversal of fatherly love in the terms of like motherly love. You know, when the mother hears someone in pain and in crying, she automatically is like, how do I help this person? What do I do? And then Aaron Taylor Johnson, his version of protecting somebody is like, oh, I'm going to kill it. And he even says it in the movie, like, the more you kill him, the easier it gets. Like, that was not an accidental line. That's about him losing his humanity and all in this world. He's killed so many people. He's been out there so long. He doesn't even know what life is like anymore. And I think that comes back in this sequence. It's another reason that I wish the character was here, because I would have liked to see his thoughts on a lot of the things that happened here. I don't understand. Well, we'll talk about that in a different section. But yeah, I really love this sequence. And especially when you talk about like the baby being born from something evil and becoming something that seems to be like pure and good. good. What does that say about Jimmy, who was born of something that seems to be evil and has become like even more evil? That feels like an interesting foil that's going to be explored, I'm sure, in the next couple of movies. I wonder if Jimmy and that baby will kind of be like parallel characters.
Yeah, that would be something very interesting. I did want to also point out real quick another pro that I did like, how they actually implemented the boats moving up and down again in the actual score, and how they actually did that. I thought that scene was really effective, the way that they implemented shots of history with shots of the movie, and then you see this like red night vision, weird kind of experimental stuff happening. And there is some stuff in here that reminded me of like a Eraserhead and other weirdness like that, where you're just seeing all these flashes of imagery as they happen and all this stuff that is like, what's going on? And I thought it was all really effective, for me at least. And so I'm curious what you thought of that sequence.
Yeah, you mentioned Lynch to me, and I'm a big Lynch fan, so I definitely got Lynch in that sequence with the way that's kind of like pushing against the boundaries of like what a film is supposed to look like, and feel like the rules of film say you shouldn't cut to a deer getting mauled in infrared in the middle of this scene, you know, but he does it, and it's really effective. It's really off-putting too, because you're like, what the hell is happening? Like, what am I seeing? It seems like that at first, but it becomes something that makes sense as the movie goes along, and you start to realize what those scenes are saying and what they're meaning. Yeah, I really want to get your thoughts on that, because that was so interesting. The Romans shooting at like their invaders being similar to the humans shooting at the infected. This seems to be setting up a statement about dehumanization. They see the infected as just like completely nothing, just like these vile bodies of filth, you know, something that is not worth any level of respect. I think they're trying to parallel that to how throughout history we tend to otherize like the villain, you know, and treat them as like something that is not human and not worthy of any level of love. And then you get the parallel to, I always say his name wrong, Ralph Fiennes.
Ralph Fiennes.
I think his character is an interesting foil, because he's always like, love is is as important as death. You know, he has that line of, he's always talking about, remember you always will die, but he then says, remember you must love. And he is a foil to Aaron Taylor Johnson and to like the Roman soldiers who are just kind of like, oh, the villain there, go kill it. Don't even think about what it might be doing or feeling. And he's saying, look, it might be a vicious monster, but like at some point these eyes saw, at some point this jaw spoke, at some point it said I love you to someone, at some point it kissed someone on the cheek. I think that was a really, really powerful arc for the character, and I think it ties back to that stuff you mentioned, the intrusive shots of the deers getting eaten, and I think ties back to his character in a way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I even think you kind of see his character for a quick glimpse in the red night vision thing where everyone's infected. I think there's like a quick shot of Ray Fiennes, at least from looking at like still images and such after seeing the movie.
And and Aaron Taylor Johnson's character hates him, right? Like without even really knowing him all that well, he's like, oh, don't go to that guy. He's crazy. Yeah. He's insane. Don't follow him. And then it turns out he might be a little bizarre. He might have some really strange practices and beliefs, but like at his core, he's not what you thought he was. And I think that's supposed to parallel how they treat the infected and how the outsiders treat the people who are quarantined too. You know, I want to talk about that soldier that came in. He was an interesting character because he has that outside perspective of like, oh, I'm just here because I've heard about what's going on. I don't really know what's going on. I think it's cool that he's the one that says zombie, because he's the one that just knows this as some kind of thing that's happening. That's probably a lot like The Walking Dead and like the shows and the movies he's watched. I think that character is really interesting when you think about these dehumanization themes that are in this movie. That's something that I'm thinking they're going to explore further in the next two movies, because like that human touch that's inside these infected is something that is like teased throughout the film, and it's something that is not wholly explored within the plot of this movie, and I really, really hope that's something that is going to be explored more.
As far as what you said about the Roman soldiers shooting at the infected, that's my favorite edit I think I've seen this year. I thought that was really fucking cool, seeing the like Roman soldiers shoot the bow, and then you see the infected getting shot at the same time, and I thought that was really neat. But I will say, even though that was one clip from 28 Weeks Later, I feel like they almost kind of retconned 28 Weeks Later in this film, because they were talking about how like the infected were starving, how the infected were doing all this stuff, and then now it's like none of that happened. Okay.
I couldn't tell you, because to be honest, I have seen those movies a few times, but it's been like many years. I don't remember them plot wise even the slightest. I couldn't tell you if they had to retcon anything. I didn't even realize that was a scene from that movie, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a scene from 28 Weeks Later. So that kind of is an interesting segue to talk about some of our cons real quickly that we have, because we spent a lot of time on the pros here. So let's talk about the cons real quick. I'll start with you. I think we have the same issues, but what was your biggest issues with this one?
I'll talk about some that I don't think you've had, because you mentioned in this review that you really got emotionally affected by this and you were crying at scenes like the mother dying and that kind of stuff. And to me, I was never really emotionally invested in this movie. I was invested in terms of like, wow, that's crazy what I'm seeing. I can't believe what I'm looking at. And I'm really thrilled by this alpha chasing them across this little tiny bridge of water. Like, what an incredible sequence. But when it came to the mother arc with the son in that second half, I just never felt myself super invested in it. I thought that the mother's actress was slightly overdoing it a little bit in terms of like the crazy scenes, like when she's kind of like, you know, having those delusions. I thought it was a little bit overperformed. And then also like when she's actually being put down, it felt so projected. I knew that was coming, and when it came, I was like, oh yeah, you know, like she's dead. It didn't hit me the way that I wanted it to hit. And the score is hitting so hard, and I could tell it was like, you got to be crying right now. And I was like, I'm not. Like, I'm interested thematically. I'm like, oh, it's cool that he's putting the skull on the pile of all the skulls. But the second they introduced, oh, by the way, I have this thing of skulls full of people who died, I was like, well, the mom's going to be on there in about 20 minutes. And it wasn't even that long. It was like 15 minutes or 10 minutes. I was like, oh, yeah, well, they introduced a pile of skulls of characters that have died. I bet we're going to have the character in a really sorrowful, score-filled moment put the skull up there. And then they did exactly that. It missed for me because it just felt like, yeah, that was obviously what they're going to be doing. But I could see what they were trying to do. And I'm bummed because I would have liked to see the actress stick around for sequels. But I'm excited to see where this thing goes, man, because let me tell you, that those last few minutes, I wasn't sure about the tonal shift. When I came into this, I was saying, oh, one of my cons is going to be the ending, because I didn't really like how it ended. But as we talked through it, I was like, you know what? Maybe I did like how it ended. I think I've changed my mind on that. But yeah, my biggest con by a mile is Aaron Taylor Johnson's absence. He was built up so well in that first act, and I was getting such great Last of Us vibes. I was thinking, man, this guy is really cool. I can't wait to see him throughout this movie and throughout this trilogy. And then he just kind of leaves the story. Like, he doesn't die. He doesn't like get pushed away for some like plot MacGuffin type of reason. He just kind of like walks away from the plot and doesn't come back. And I'm like, so you just like stop looking for you didn't even try to look for your son and your wife. You were just like, well, they're gone. There was never a moment where you're like, I'm gonna go find them, hell or high water. I'm gonna find my family. That was the character that you set up. Like that was the character I thought this guy was. I'm gonna go find my family. I kept waiting for him to show up at some point, but he's just hanging out at home, I guess. Maybe it was a scheduling thing. I wonder if it was just Kraven the Hunter was being filmed, so Aaron Taylor Johnson couldn't really film this whole movie, so we have to get rid of him for a few months or whatever. But it was a strange choice, and there were so many moments, like I mentioned, where I would have loved to see the husband there for those sequences. I would love to see his reaction to the mom having cancer.
I agree. What I think they could have done is you could have had maybe the dad not show up through a lot of the movie, and then as soon as it's revealed that she has cancer, you see the dad, he knew probably that his son would go to this doctor, so he tracked down where the doctor would be, and then he walks in like maybe on that moment.
Mm-hmm. It'd be one of those things where it's like, oh, your dad totally let you walk to the store by yourself, but really he's following you like half a block behind, making sure that you're going the right way type of thing. And he could have been letting his son have this moment leading the mom, but really the dad's been there the whole time. But they didn't go that way.
Yeah, they didn't go that way. I think that would have been nice to be able to do that. I don't have very many cons of this movie, but one of my cons definitely is Aaron Taylor Johnson. I wish y'all could have done something more because he's such a good actor.
I understand the reality of like he's filming something else. We can't have him film 2 movies at once as the lead actor, but like you could have given me any plot explanation for what he was doing or why he wasn't there or anything like that. And at this point, like the story has moved to this other group in this other direction. Is there even a room for Aaron Taylor Johnson's character at this point? Like maybe he comes back after his son now. His son left him that letter saying like, don't come after me. And he's in a different part of the country now with a different group. I'm sure they'll come up with a plot excuse to bring him back to the fold or whatever, but the story's moved away from this character now, and it's going to be weird to force him back in the sequel, and they could have just kept him around in this one. It would have been a lot better to have him there for multiple parts of the story.
Yeah, I completely agree. But at the end of the day, guys, I still really much enjoyed it. Even though that was an issue that I had about Aaron Taylor Johnson, at the end of the day, I still think that this was a really solid film with great performances, an amazing score, an amazing cinematography. I thought the editing for the most part was really experimental and really fascinating. Like, there's so much great technical work going on here that the pros definitely outweigh the cons. I think it's one of the best movies of the year. I thought this was really fascinating. It's my favorite of this trilogy, but it's really, really fascinating. It makes me much more excited to see what Nia DaCosta does with the sequel. It'll be kind of interesting how she does what they set up with like the Jimmys and stuff like that. So I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that sequel and what it's going to feel like, especially when we know that Danny Boyle has done both bookends. I'm really excited to see how it goes. I'm going between an 8 and a 9 on this one. I was leaning towards an 8, but the experimental side of this and just the ambitious nature of this thing, like Danny Boyle really taking the opportunity to not just do a nostalgic sequel that brings back the cast and has like a moment where he walks in at the end and plays some kind of theme song or whatever, and everybody cheers and claps. I was kind of waiting for that to happen in that last moment, and to not go that way, to almost like tee up a nostalgia scene and then have it be like, no, it's actually not a nostalgia scene. I think that was a pretty cool choice. So I'm actually probably at a 9 on this one. Aaron Taylor Johnson absence for me is what really holds this thing back from being like a masterpiece level legacy sequel type of thing, but it's so good. And I honestly feel like once the sequels come out, this could be one that goes up from being like an 8-9 to being something even better than that.
Anyways, guys, that's our review. What did y'all think of this film? What's your favorite of this franchise so far? Let us know down in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you like this video, that you ring the notification bell so you do not miss a single video. Thank you all for tuning in. We will see you all in the next review. Until next time, keep on watching those horror movies.